welcome back to the Boropolis Podcast. As always, I'm joined with Nathan, and we have one hell of a result to talk about. Nathan, before we get into Boro's first win at Swansea since 2009, how's your week been?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, just keeping on rolling with things with university. But it always helps when you have a Boro game to look forward to at the weekend. And it is made even better when they are just stupendous at football. And that's what we are at the minute. So, yeah, another win to talk about. Can't wait to get into it. But what about yourself, Chris? How are you doing?
Yeah, good. It feels, strangely enough, as though I've been back in England for like a week. Yeah, it's been about 3 now. I think I'm still just in the mode where I'd quite like to still be abroad. But there is the fact that I get to go and watch this Middlesbrough team actually live in person, which is pretty much the best thing since sliced bread at the moment, isn't it, really? Truthfully, Nathan, we never really do this actually, but going into the game, what was your feelings? What was your predictions? Because we try to not give predictions because it always seems to come back and haunt us. But I suppose we always know what type of team Swansea are. But truthfully, did you see us going all that way and sort of breaking the curse that has been going on for all these years?
I didn't know. I think the usual pessimistic Boro fan kicked in myself, and hearing about the record at Swansea, seeing Boro go there over the last few years and come off the back of horrendous results there. I didn't expect us to go there and get anything, despite the unbelievable form that we've shown under Michael Carrick since he came into the football club. It always seems like a difficult game, and that goes for Cardiff as well. I always hate going to Wales with Boro. I just think that both sides are very difficult places to go, and the record at Swansea, there's been more unkind to us than Cardiff has over the past few years. So, yeah, I wasn't feeling too confident, and especially because they've come off the back of some poor results themselves, and of course, going back home and playing in front of their own fans, it probably gave them a little bit of a boost going into this one. So, yeah, the hope was to go there and get a positive result. I was maybe holding out for a draw. A little bit of hope left in me was thinking, well, if we are truly in contention for promotion, then we would go there and win. And yeah, that little bit of hope was rewarded, I suppose, with the full-time results. What about yourself, Chris? What did you think?
To be truthfully honest, Nathan, I was quite shocked at how much pressure Russell Martin was under going into the game. I listened to the podcast that the Northern Echo lads had done, and obviously listening to Scott and Dom chat about really hearing from their local press and talking about, actually there was a few murmurings that perhaps even if Swansea lost this game, they could be curtains to Russell Martin. And I mean, it's strange, isn't it, when you consider Russell Martin's still seen as somewhat, I guess probably not so much at the moment, but he's still seen as somewhat of this, young English coach that's got a real good reputation. And actually, I think obviously there's been other issues at Swansea with not being able to recruit players and sort of the ownership situation there. But I mean, they're really struggling at the moment, aren't they? So yeah, that was interesting going into the game because previously I wasn't too aware of it, to be honest. But yeah, put a little bit extra on the game. Obviously going into the game, Nathan, one change, and actually a complete shock for me. I think a complete shock for everyone, really. Dale Fry wasn't in the squad. Obviously, we found out after the game it was through illness. And actually, perhaps more of a shock, Paddy McNair's face has healed in time to actually make the squad and start the game, because in Michael Carrick's pre-match press conference, I mean, it wasn't really sounding too clever, was it? It didn't seem like he was going to be in the squad at all. And then obviously the team comes out and he's in that starting 11.
Yeah, I think that it was probably maybe pushed upon Paddy McNair to play this game if Dale Fry pulled out quite late in the week. I mean, I follow, of course, the socials of Middlesbrough Football Club, and they posted quite a jokey video of who's the most funny player in the dressing room, and Dale Fry featured in that video, and that was maybe Thursday afternoon. Of course, it could have been filmed before, but yeah, a shock to see Dale outside of the squad. But yeah, good to see Paddy McNair in there, and I think for the game he was sporting a protective mask, quite like Dale Fry has been since that Sunderland game. But yeah, some changes on the bench as well for Boro. Isaiah Jones not in the squad, although he did travel with the squad to Wales. Sonny Finch on the bench. Matt Crooks still absent. Hopefully we'll see the big tree back in action this week with 2 home games. But yeah, the big tree and Dale Fry missing out of this game for at Swansea, and Paddy McNair coming into the fold. But again, not a negative point that Paddy McNair comes back in. Progressive ball playing centre half for Boro, and yeah, you couldn't really pick between any of the 3 centre halves that we've got at the minute to fit in that back two, because they've all been outstanding as they've deputised for each other. So yeah, no complaints from me with the starting 11. What about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, I think probably the only one that maybe was not questionable at all, because it was thoroughly deserved after his performance the week prior. But obviously, Aaron Ramsey and Marcus Forss, it still feels like almost Marcus Forss has been a little bit hard done by, to be honest. He didn't really do anything wrong to lose his place in the team, and just unfortunately for him, Aaron Ramsey's come in and had such a significant impact now. So I guess probably I think that position on, I guess I know our wingers sort of alternate, and realistically they don't play as natural wingers anyway. But one of those wide positions is probably now Aaron Ramsey's to lose, to be honest, because Riley McGree is always sort of a fixture in the team, isn't he now? So integral to the way we play. But yeah, Aaron Ramsey's won that place and obviously kept his place in the team. So that was the only one really that I thought may have been, especially for such a difficult game away at Swansea. But of course, no problems with him keeping his place at all. And yeah, it proved to be an inspired decision from Michael Carrick, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Going into the game now, I think that it caught me by surprise, the early stages, if I'm honest. As we spoke about earlier on in the podcast, Swansea's a very difficult place to go to, because they've been the same sort of team throughout the last 10 years or so, that they try and dominate the ball. And especially at home, you'd expect the home side to be the team that are imposing their game on the away side. But Middlesbrough in the early stages were remarkable in terms of their possession, just kept the ball away from Swansea quite comfortably throughout, really, in the opening 15 minutes. Carved a few openings, but nothing too much to shout about. There was one, Aaron Ramsey got the ball through the lines, drove forward, played in Cameron Archer, and he whipped a ball just wide of Andy Fisher's left-hand post. But apart from that, in the early stages, Middlesbrough did quite well to hold the ball and knock it around quite well. Swansea limited to nothing up until a goal that came pretty much against every run of play that was made in the first 15 minutes or so. And the goal comes from Joel Pirot. Swansea attacking, Matt Grimes has the opportunity to shoot, sort of chops left and chops right, knocks it out to Sorinola. Sorinola then plays the ball across to Manning. Manning fires I think it is going to be a shot, really. Yeah. And the most fortuitous goal I think I've seen for a long time against Middlesbrough. The shot cannons off Tommy Smith's backside straight into the path of Perrault, who just knocks it in with his right foot. A very comfortable finish for a forward that, okay, he hasn't scored quite as many as he probably should have done for Swansea. But yeah, he knocks that one in and puts Boro on the back foot a little bit, especially considering how well we did in the early stages. And Boro had to bounce back, didn't they, Chris, as they have done in a few games this season. When they go 1-0 down, they usually fight back and do quite well. But what did you make of the goal? And then what did you make of Boro's response, Chris?
Yeah, as you say, really, sort of going back even before Swansea had got the opener, we started the game so well. We had so many situations where we were probably one pass away from finding the back of the net. As you say, there was a few times where Ramsey, who all day caused Swansea's backline problems, didn't he? Would get into little pockets and just underhit his pass, so it'd be cut out right before, you know, a shot would happen, I guess. But in terms of the goal, it's just so lucky, isn't it, really? I think you're right. I think Manning is going for goal originally, and it just takes that wicked deflection. And at that point, there was a real conflict of emotions, to be honest, because it was almost, well, this is typical Boro. You know, as soon as we're expected to go to a place and win and carry on our automatic promotion charge, carry on the chase of Sheffield United, we've sort of let it slip already, and that's that. But then also, it's quite a strange feeling, and I think you'll probably agree that with this Michael Carrick side, even when it goes 1-0 down, you don't fully think, well, that's that. And that's not really a characteristic of any Middlesbrough team I think I've ever watched, to be honest. Even under Aitor Karanka, you know, we won so many games 1-0, but just didn't concede first. And I think there was even a start, actually, that went on for a good few years under Karanka, where we hadn't come back from being 1-0 down or being behind for, I think it went on for months, to be honest. But yeah, it's a real feature of this Michael Carrick side. They bounce back. They don't really let goals affect them. And obviously the timing of it was very unfortunate. But yeah, we bounced back. And to be honest, we didn't really look as though it fazed us at all. It was similar to actually the Sheffield United game, where we went behind early and, you know, the team could easily crumble, and sort of the amount of pressure on them at the moment to keep up with Sheffield United. And yet it just sort of didn't really faze them, and they got back to doing what they were doing before the opener. For obviously in the Sheffield United game, it was McBurney, wasn't it? And then in this game, obviously, Boro, who we did mention last week, obviously, I think all EFL fans know of Joel Boro, but yeah, that record goes on where we mention a player and he then goes on to score against us the week after.
Yeah, it did. And I'd seen a few fans say that perhaps Middlesbrough hadn't performed overly well in the first half, and I can kind of understand that because there wasn't too many clear-cut chances created in the first half. But for us to go away from home to a side that are very heavily possession-based and dominate the ball as comfortably as we did in that first half, I thought that was fantastic. But as I've just said, not enough clear-cut chances in the first half. I can remember openings after the Swansea goal. McGree played a neat one too. I think it was with Archer, and then just struggled to get his shot off. Another one, Chuba got the ball and he had McGree coming in from that right-hand side. Swansea's left back had tucked in, and all he had to do was slide McGree in, and he had that opportunity to get a shot off at goal. And Chuba instead came inside onto his left foot and tried to get a shot off, and it didn't result in anything. So I think that in terms of chance creation in that first half, yeah, okay, it was limited. There wasn't too many clear-cut chances, but in terms of playing our own game and keeping hold of the ball comfortably, it was fantastic. Ball retention was really good. But as we moved on into the second half, the hope was that we'd get that one goal to get us back into the game. And then I think that a lot of Boro fans would have thought that if we get one, we'll go on to win the game, because Swansea was so open at the back. That's a feature of their play, that at the back, they are, well, liabilities really. They leave too much space in behind them. So if you have pace in your front line, there's going to be openings for you. And there was just that. But before Boro got that equaliser, there was a moment of near despair. Corner comes in to the back post. I think Latabaudiere wins it over Johnny Howson. Then an overhead kick comes in. Stefan makes the save, and Jay Fulton fires in 2-0 Swansea. You think, oh my God, no way, the game's dead.
Yeah.
And the camera pans to the linesman, and he's got his flag up, which was a massive, massive sigh of relief. And it was the right call on reflection on the replay. Jay Fulton is offside, and thank God he is, because 53rd minute, Jay Fulton's goals disallowed. 54th minute, Middlesbrough equalise.
Yeah, it's... I mean, as I said to you earlier, obviously, at the time, in so few minutes where obviously we go and equalise, and then obviously we get the news that Luton have scored at Sheffield United, all of this just only moments after that had been disallowed. I just turned to my dad watching the game, just said, I can't do this for 10 more games or 11 more games or however many more it is. It already feels like there's just going to be so many twists and turns, and obviously we're still the chasers. But yeah, as you say, it did sort of feel like, oh dear, this might be us sort of out of the automatic promotion race. As soon as you saw that second goal hit the back of the net, only to then see the lino with his flag up. And it was just the biggest sigh of relief I can probably remember for months, to be honest. But yeah, as you say, Middlesbrough get themselves level. And it's the man that we spoke about earlier, Aaron Ramsey. Actually quite fortuitous in the end, because I think he probably takes too long to pick out the pass that he wants to, and then latches onto the rebound of his pass from the Swansea defender's deflection. But yeah, a big moment in the game, and obviously with the context of the other goal going in at that time in the other game, yeah, a huge moment for Boro. And actually, like you said, it did feel like if Middlesbrough could just get level, they'd go on and win the game.
Yeah, it did. And as we spoke about there, Swansea's defence do leave many big spaces in behind them. And it actually comes from a Swansea attack, this goal. Down their left-hand side, Manning tries to cross the ball into the box, and Paddy McNair clears it towards the halfway line. Chuba Akpom is Middlesbrough's furthest man forward at the time, and Matthew Sorinola's behind him, and Chuba does really, really well to just sort of put off Sorinola here and get his body in the way and make it difficult for him to clear it back. And the ball breaks off Sorinola's leg wide to Middlesbrough's right-hand side, and Riley McGree's breaking forward. A fantastic ball with the outside of his left foot across the pitch and into Swansea's half for Aaron Ramsey to stride onto. And you're thinking, get a shot off with your left foot here, because that's where the opening is. And he's cut back onto his right, and you're thinking, oh, why have you done that? Because there's two Swansea players coming flying in to try and make a block of either the pass or the shot. And Ramsey tries to play his pass anyway. It then comes off Sorinola, and the ball breaks in behind again, and yeah, it's sort of a little bit of a race between Ramsey and Matt Grimes to get to that loose ball. Ramsey gets there, takes a touch, steadies himself, and sort of chips/prods the ball beyond Fisher in off the post as the ball has hit the post, and it's sort of trickling back across goal. I didn't know if it was in. I didn't know if it was going just across the face of goal and into Fisher's arms. But luckily, it connects with the side netting of the other end of the goal, and Middlesbrough level 10 minutes into the second half. And it was a massive, massive goal, a massive minute in the race for promotion, with Sheffield United going down 1-0 to Luton in the same minute as well. Middlesbrough were back in business. And yeah, it felt like the momentum and the pendulum had swung back in Middlesbrough's favour a little bit with that goal. And it felt like Middlesbrough were going to do everything that they possibly could to get that second goal and get themselves into the lead, which it didn't take very long, did it, Chris?
No, it didn't at all. And yeah, I've got to hold my hands up for this goal as it goes in. Obviously, we haven't even described what happened yet. But I'm just going to open up now and say I didn't even, for a solid minute, I didn't even celebrate the goal because I was absolutely adamant that Cameron Archer was offside when he headed it in. Obviously, from the replay, we know this wasn't the case at all. But I think, obviously, when Hayden Hackney sort of slices the ball about 400 metres into the sky and it's just floating back down, you're almost just waiting for a Swansea player to come and meet it or the keeper to come and claim it. And instead of trying to defend this looping ball into the box, they just instead decide to have a game of musical statues and just stopping the places. And Cameron Archer, literally from about 4 yards out, just headers it into the back of the net, skids off, obviously gets the old bow and arrow out. And yeah, I was in utter disbelief. I was just waiting, like we'd seen from the Fulton goal, for the camera to pan to the lino and for the lino to put his flag up. And in this case, it just doesn't come. I think Mark Jury, even on BBC's commentary, said Boro have the ball in the net and then waited about 30 seconds and then just went, it's onside. And I just, yeah, it might have been different in the stadium, but certainly from obviously for both of us, I don't know if you were just caught out by it being off, well, thinking that it was offside as well. But yeah, I just, again, looked over at my dad and sort of, is that it? Is it a goal? I don't really know. Should we celebrate? But yeah, it was more shock than a celebration from me. What about you, Nathan?
Yeah, well, I sit here in my flat and I've got it on iFollow on the TV, and the ball's been skewed up into the air from Hackney. It was a Boro corner that was taken short, whipped in by Giles, and cleared away only as far as Hackney, who was encouraged by the away following to hit a volley that screamed into the top corner, but that wasn't to be the case. It skewed up into the air and into the Swansea penalty area, as you described, Chris. And yeah, for some reason, all their players just stopped, and Archer had the easiest chance he's probably going to have, where he's just been able to nod it in quite comfortably from about 5 yards. And my honest reaction was, I've stood up to celebrate the goal because I've seen it hit the back of the net. And as I've shouted, get in, I've then thought, but is he not offside?
Yeah.
So then I've just stood awkwardly watching the screen. Archer's knee sliding all over the place with the bow and arrow. The players are flying all over the place. The fans are flying all over the place. And I didn't want to celebrate until they were pretty much walking back to the halfway line. And I let out a massive roar of jubilation. I had my window open of my flat. I think the people outside must have thought that someone was being murdered because of how loud I screamed. My mate in the flat was like, "Is it 1-1?" And I said, "No, it's 2-1 because we've scored 2 in about 30 seconds." And life was fantastic from then on, really. Swansea didn't offer too much. There was one effort that forced Stefan into a save. Jamie Patterson, of course, ex-Middlesbrough trialist, whipping a ball into the far corner. Stefan was equal to it to tip round for a corner. And yeah, a sigh of relief was breathed, I think, by all of Teesside with that second goal by Archer, and by how comfortable Boro were following that second goal. They just calmed things down, tried to carve out a few more opportunities and get that third goal that would have got us well and truly out of sight. And Boro do get that third goal through the penalty from Chuba Akpom, but the penalty decision, I think it's as blatant as it possibly can be, really. Aaron Ramsey down that left-hand side, drives to the byline, crosses the ball into the box. It goes through everyone and only as far as McGree towards that right-hand side of the box. And he's looking to pick a pass in the middle and there's no options for him. So then he tries to take Joel Latabaudiere to the byline. And I'm thinking, you probably shouldn't have done that because Riley McGree's right foot isn't the best. I'm expecting the chop in and then the left foot again. But the chop didn't come from Riley McGree. It came from Latabaudiere, who just chopped McGree's legs from beneath him in what was probably one of the stupidest tackles I've ever seen, because McGree's going nowhere. And yeah, Middlesbrough gifted a penalty. The championship top goal scorer and driver of the train, Chuba Akpom, steps up, a few shimmies, and neatly slots home, puts the ball into the bottom corner, sends Fisher the wrong way, and executes what was probably the most gorgeous knee slide of the season. He's got the knee slide perfect in terms of sort of distance covered on the knee slide. He's even put in a little spin at the end, and he's got the arms out like Thierry Henry as well. It was a perfect knee slide by a perfect player, the perfect number 10 for Middlesbrough, and it was 3 points all but secured with that goal.
Yeah, it was. And as you say, I mean, there's all sorts of metrics and stats about pretty much everything to do with football now. I think some of the ball boys are even getting expected sort of throws back to the opposition and things like that. But I think distance covered for knee slides needs to be implemented sooner rather than later, because the surface was as perfect as it could possibly be for a knee slide. And obviously Cameron Archer had shown us his version of a knee slide slightly earlier on in the game, but then I think Chuba just slightly tops it. As you say, it's almost perfect. The rain had probably come down a little bit more, and I think just that the extra little bit on the grass has allowed him to get that extra distance. But yeah, I mean, going back to the actual penalty incident, as you say, probably one of the most stupidest tackles I've ever seen. I mean, you'd expect the Swansea defender to understand, having played against Riley McGree before, and through all of the analysis that no doubt Russell Martin's gone through this week, that Riley McGree is heavily left-footed and is, without being disrespectful, not great on his right. So when he goes to the byline on his right, you just think, just stand up. There's no need to dive in. And before McGree's even made an attempt to swing a right foot to sort of chip it back into the box, he's just been absolutely wiped out. Not that I was complaining, but as you say, a really, really bizarre challenge. And actually, I mean, we've spoken about his knee slide. We've spoken about his goal. We've spoken about him being the driver, conductor, whatever you want to call him, of the train. But actually, the knee slide wasn't even the filthiest thing that Chuba done all afternoon. Because the bit of skill just after we go 2-1 up, it had to be mentioned, Nathan. Actually, he should square the ball and we should be 3-1 up earlier in the game. But the sort of spin Megs just, I mean, it just sums Chuba's game up at the moment, isn't it? I mean, really, the confidence on display just to do something as scandalous as that. I mean, I can't even remember the defender that it was, but I imagine he's got a family, and to do something as rude as that on a football pitch with thousands of people watching, I mean, Chuba should have really apologised afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to throw that. I think it was Latibeaudier again. It was a poor afternoon for him throughout. But yeah, it was truthfully vile, disgusting. All of those words to watch, really. It was really, it should have come with a trigger warning and 18 plus warning as well. Truly explicit content from the feet of Chuba Akpom. If he'd scored that, it'd without doubt be up there with goal of the season, Puskas goal of the year contender, goal of the century, just best goal of all time contender, really. It was truthfully disgusting to watch as he scooped her, nutmegged the Swansea defender. It was, horrible. If you were a Swansea fan, to watch that and see your defender be, well, truthfully murdered in the middle of the pitch by Chuba Akpom. But yeah, the man has confidence throwing through every fibre of his body at this moment in time. And he definitely deserves that as well, because to have 22 goals, be out on his own as the championship top goal scorer, 5 ahead now of Victor Gyökeres, playing, I think it's 5 games less than Gyökeres as well. So get that in your pipe and smoke it. But yeah, Boro comfortable after that second goal, really. Getting that third was the icing on the cake. Got that, any sort of nervousness eradicated from the fans, the team, everyone. And yeah, Boro win 3-1 again for what must be the millionth time this season. It seems like Boro's favourite scoreline. And yeah, as we said at the start of the podcast, the first win away at Swansea since 2009. And I think it's something like the first league double over Swansea since something like 1960 or something, which is outstanding as well. I think what is always the case in seasons like promotion seasons is where you eradicate stadiums that have been bogey grounds for you.
Yeah.
And one of those in our previous promotion season under Aitor Karanka was Hillsborough, and we went there and won 3-1 that day. And this one, again, Swansea, it's been a horrible place to go in recent years for Middlesbrough. As we spoke in the last podcast, that horrible Rudy Gestede header was a memory that we didn't want to be tainted by for any longer. And thank goodness we'll finally have some happy memories of going to the Liberty or the Swansea.com stadium, because it's been a really, really poor place to go in recent years. And to get a win there was massive, especially given the context of the other results in the day. Of course, we had on Friday night Stoke against Blackburn. Stoke ran out 3-2 winners of that one, which was a help, because had Blackburn won that, they'd have leapfrogged us. And then, of course, the big one, which was Sheffield United playing Luton. Luton, I don't want to sort of discredit anything that they're doing, because they're only 3 points behind us now as well.
Yeah.
But the most important thing for us was having that sort of belief that Sheffield United is still there to be caught. And with 7 points being the gap at the start of play on Saturday, with Sheffield United's win in midweek in their game in hand against Reading, it was massive that gap got cut once again. And yeah, from the sounds of everything, from the pundits, from the Sheffield United fans, it appears that the alarm bells are ringing at Bramall Lane, and they know that this Middlesbrough side are just coming 100% over the hills for them, gunning for them, and their players' heads must be rolling a little bit at their past few results. 4 defeats out of the last 6 for the Blades, and long may that continue. That is my only hope for the upcoming weeks. But yeah, we've got a massive week coming up, don't we, Chris? 2 home games to discuss, and 2 home games before a very, very, very unfortunate international break coming up, which it's just something that I dread, really, and especially when you're performing really well. I think last year the international break probably came at a good time for Boro under Chris Wilder. They probably did need a break. They were showing signs of tiredness, but these boys are showing no signs of letting up at this moment in time. And yeah, it's come at quite a poor time. But yeah, 2 home games to discuss, Chris. Let's get into it.
Yeah, obviously, first up, Tuesday night, Stoke will visit the Riverside. And actually, it's come at quite an interesting time, because all of a sudden, Stoke have had 2 real standout results. Obviously, you mentioned them beating Blackburn 3-2, and obviously the week prior, sticking 5 past Sunderland. They've sort of hit a little bit of a good patch under Alex Neil for the first time since he really took over, to be honest. They're scoring goals. Obviously, they've got Dwight Gale up front, who we all know Middlesbrough tracked all summer. And I mean, numerous sort of people and sources were adamant that this was going to happen. And then it just never really got over the line. Obviously, there's that in it. And yeah, I mean, it comes at a time where you look at the Championship for what it is, and you think Stoke will be coming to the Riverside on Tuesday night and thinking we can cause them problems. And it is a real, not a potential banana skin, because everyone's been made aware of everything that Stoke have to offer at the moment. But certainly it's a home game that is really vital that we continue the run of good form on, obviously, since that defeat away at West Brom. And yeah, it's going to be a difficult game. Perhaps you could argue our most difficult game in quite a few weeks, actually. I mean, even West Brom travelling to the Hawthorns and getting beat there, we spoke about how their sort of position in the table and some of their players don't really reflect sort of, I guess, their team as a whole. It's a strange one. Obviously, they picked up 3 points at the weekend. But yes, Stoke, they've obviously hit this little purple patch, and they do worry me. I can't lie, Nathan.
Yeah, similar to myself as well. You look at their squad on the whole, on paper, and you see some of the names in there that have performed very well in the Championship in the past, and you think, yeah, they probably should be higher than they are in the league table because of some of those players there, and had they gelled, they would certainly be a force to be reckoned with in the division, because some of their players are tremendous, really. Of course, you mentioned Gale there, prolific in seasons gone by in the Championship. Tyrese Campbell now back fully fit from his injuries. Josh Laurent in midfield performs very well for Reading over the last few years. Left, gone to Stoke now, performing really well. Ben Pearson, a player that used to be formidable for Preston North End, very good central midfield player. I think he's one of those players that goes under the radar because he's not there for scoring goals and setting things up, but he breaks up play really well, just keeps things simple. He's there on loan. And yeah, they've got a really good squad and a really good spine of the team running through at the moment. The hope is that they were rocked a little bit the other day in the game against Blackburn. I did watch the full game, thought it would be of interest to watch Blackburn as well, having them beat Sheffield United the week before. And I wanted to see how serious they were in terms of competition. And they went 2-0 down in the first half. They got that third goal, Stoke did, through Tyrese Campbell. But then 2 late goals from Blackburn sort of not turned the game, but made the scoreline look a little bit more competitive than the game probably was. Yeah. And you could see in the crowd as well, there was slight murmurs of, oh, here we go again, sort of thing, moods from the Stoke fans of, yeah, we've gone into a lead and we might throw it away here. But it wasn't to be the case. They did hold on. But the hope is that those 2 goals have rocked them a little bit and make them sort of fire them a little bit back down to earth, because they've scored 8 goals in the last 2 games, 5 at the Stadium of Light and 3 at home against Blackburn. And they hadn't shipped any goals at the Stadium of Light. They conceded the 1. And then going into this one, they'll have been full of confidence. And of course, they still will be, scoring 3 at home. But conceding 2 late goals will be something that hopefully will hamper them a little bit. But they're a side that don't usually look to have a lot of the ball, but they try and press you high up the pitch. So the aim has got to be play through that press. If we do play through the press, they can be got at, because at the back they're not that good. So especially with us being the home side as well, I'd hope that we can impose our game on them and hopefully find the negative attributes of their game and exploit them 100%. But yeah, that is probably going to be our most difficult game of the week. I don't want to jinx it, because we then go on to play Preston North End on Saturday at home. And funnily enough, Preston are higher than Stoke in the league, despite me saying that Stoke are probably a more difficult test. Yeah, Preston, funny side. They look to have fallen off a cliff a little bit from when we first played them under Michael Carrick. And of course, they beat us at Deepdale in Carrick's first game as Boro boss. They were well and truly in the playoff picture at that point, and had sort of exceeded a lot of expectations as well. Done really, really well to get themselves in that position. And then I think they've sort of just leveled out a little bit now, sort of found out where they probably should be in the table. They've been hampered with injuries a little bit. Emile Rees, of course, a player that Boro fans will be familiar with. 1, because he was linked to us all summer, but 2, because he scores every time he plays against us. He's out until the end of the season with an ACL injury, which I suppose is harsh of me to say, but a bonus for us in the sense of it means that he won't get his customary goal against us. But they have some good forwards available as well. Tom Cannon, on loan from Everton, a young forward, scored in his last game against Cardiff in a 2-0 win for Preston. And yeah, he's a very quick centre forward, looks to stretch defences, but hopefully Boro won't be feeling any effects of Cannon and, of course, Ched Evans up front for Preston, because, again, expect us to dominate a lot of the ball and impose our game on the opposition. I think this is a massive week for us. Looking at the context of the table, Sheffield United go away on Wednesday night, so the day after Boro play Stoke, and they go to the Stadium of Light. A very, very difficult test for the Blades going up there, especially off the back of Sunderland winning at Norwich this weekend. Let's hope that lot can do us a favour. My hopes aren't massive, but that'd be ideal. And then, of course, the Preston game comes on Saturday, and Sheffield United don't play in the league on Saturday. They play in the FA Cup against Blackburn, which, I mean, hopefully that disrupts their schedule a little bit, because whoever wins that game has a trip to Wembley.
Yeah.
The eyes may be off the league a little bit, and yeah, it'll hopefully rack up the fixtures a little bit more for one of Blackburn or Sheffield United. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Boro could be in the top two by the time the international break rolls round. What are your feelings going into this week, Chris? I know that's a massive, massive sentence that I've just thrown out there then. And I don't want to get ahead of myself at all, because the pessimistic side of me is still burning very, very strong. Yeah. I am still very much of the belief and of the opinion that it's bound to come to an end soon. It must do. There's just no way that this goes on for as long as it does, and there's no way it continues for any much longer. But what are your feelings, Chris? Stoke and Preston travelling to the Riverside this week. How do you think this week will pan out for Middlesbrough?
Yeah, it's really getting into the crunch time of the season, isn't it? Do you know what? It's obviously very, very nerve-wracking. As I said, those few minutes where the news of Luton's goal come through, and obviously we equalised. I mean, there's going to be moments like that, I guess, throughout the next 10 games, I think, is left now. But it's just, I don't know, there's almost a part of me that, okay, yes, I mean, from the position that we were in, I should say, when we lost that first game under Michael Carrick against Preston to now, it's just dreamland in itself, really. And I don't know if it's just a coping mechanism or it's just me telling myself not to get too excited by all the prospect of what could happen at the end of the season. But I'm almost just enjoying the ride at the moment. And I mean, if you just take away the, I guess, whole context of the league table and everything like that, and you were just, a fan of the team that liked to be entertained watching the games, I mean, not only are we winning, we're winning in style. We play great football. We're getting to watch some really, really talented players. Obviously, some of the loanees have been the real talk of this week. But, I mean, the squad that we've assembled and the way that Michael Carrick starts playing is just, I mean, I feel like we say it every week on the podcast now, but it's remarkable to think of the position that we're in. And I should also say, Nathan, we haven't even mentioned it. I guess the job when Michael Carrick first arrived was to keep this Middlesbrough team up, and we're actually mathematically safe now after the results at the weekend. So, I mean, it really calls for a celebration, to be honest, doesn't it?
It does. I'm just remembering going back to that Preston game, the away game, Michael Carrick's first game as Boro boss. And I remember receiving a text from yourself following the full-time whistle. Of course, Middlesbrough that day conceded in the 91st minute. A Jordan Story header won the game for Preston. And I remember receiving a text from Chris that day that just said, "We're actually going down." And at the time, it was very, very feasible that Middlesbrough could have gone down. And yeah, Michael Carrick, the words for that man from every Middlesbrough fan, I don't know what words can describe him, what superlatives can describe the man anymore, and what job he has done. Him, Jonathan Woodgate, Aaron Danks, the lot of them, they've made this season truly joyful to watch. And the hope is that Boro can just keep on riding the wave, keep on going. It's the final 10 now. I can't believe it's the final 10 games already, by the way. It's gone really quickly this season. But yeah, the final 10. It's the final push. We have some difficult games coming up. 2 more before the international break, but 2 home games. So the hope is the Riverside is full. It's rocking. And yeah, hopefully we get 2 really, really positive results this week. Yourself will be there for both the games, Chris. I'll be there for Preston on Saturday. I'll be in the University of Lincoln Student Union with my Boro shirt on Tuesday evening, watching Boro live on Sky sack off Real Madrid against Liverpool.
Yeah.
Boro v Stoke is the big one on Tuesday night. And yeah, let's hope Michael Carrick's boys can get those positive results and make this race for the top 2 very, very, very interesting, almost as interesting as it already is at this moment in time.
Yeah, and Nathan, I can't believe we've actually sort of gone the full podcast without discussing it. But actually, before this week's games, I mean, the reason why we haven't discussed it is probably because there was no turmoil, and actually our manager wasn't twerking for other clubs during his press conferences. But before all this had even happened, Michael Carrick just reaffirmed that he wants to be at Middlesbrough Football Club and how much he's enjoying it, and put to bed a little bit of speculation about West Ham. I mean, yeah, I think, as I've just said, the reason why it's sort of skipped our minds a little bit is because we aren't having our manager banded around and discussed in a way where really you're sort of just expecting him to wave goodbye in, whatever circumstance. Obviously, we're talking about how well Michael Carrick answered some of the questions in his press conference pre the Swansea game. And another thing we haven't mentioned, Chris Wilder's back in football.
He is. Both of those sort of topics go hand in hand, don't they? Of course, with Big Wilder being back in the hot seat at Watford, and of course, around this time last season, actually, Wilder was, not answering questions regarding his future at the football club, regarding Burnley and Bournemouth and clubs of that ilk. And we have a manager now that just reaffirmed that he's loving the job that he's in at this moment in time, and that things are going incredibly well. So why wouldn't he be? Sort of like last season, possibly the answer that someone else could have given. Yeah. But also mention of the man and back in the hot seat at Watford. I hope you enjoyed your trip to Loftus Road at the weekend, Chris. Long may that already continue.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that it would be bad enough to go in one job and witness the first half performance that we put up at Loftus Road earlier this season. But actually, by all accounts, Watford were just as bad at Loftus Road. So, yeah, unfortunate start for Mr. Wilder. But I'm withdrawing any comment because the football gods will be listening and they'll somehow sneak into the playoffs. And I don't even want to say the rest out loud, but you know what I'm getting at. So, yeah, obviously, quite an interesting turn of events this week before the games had even been played. But, yeah, I mean, just how good is it to have a manager? And it was a point, actually, that I think Dom Shaw made in the Northern Echo podcast that I was referring to earlier, that actually it's a situation where perhaps you would have expected the way that Carrick and the way that Wilder sort of dealt with the situation almost to be the other way around. The inexperienced manager may have got himself tripped up with a tricky question and sort of not really known how to answer the question. And you would have expected the experienced head to just put it to bed and say the correct things, whereas actually we're in a position where the inexperienced manager put it to bed straight away and just, answered it in the way that Michael Carrick answers everything, with absolute class and without really any hysteria. It was almost a shrug of the shoulders, as if to say, well, I absolutely love it here and why wouldn't I? And yeah, that's all we want as fans, really, isn't it?
Of course you do. And I think it shows a little bit the measure of the man as well. Of course, we saw Chris Wilder stumbling his way through punditry last week with Sheffield United against Tottenham. Couldn't even say Josh Coburn's name right. So it shows the measure of the man, really, about what he thinks of the job that he was in at the time. And yeah, I hope that he does all the best at Watford. He'll probably be gone in the next 3 weeks or so. You know, their history sacking managers anyway. So yeah, actually watched his press conference on Friday afternoon, Wilder, and yeah, don't judge him on the first 10 games of this season. Remember that, everyone. It wasn't his fault. It definitely wasn't his fault. I promise you.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Michael Carrick is the man. He's in charge of Middlesbrough Football Club. He's fired Middlesbrough from the relegation zone into automatic promotion contention. And let's hope that he can fire Boro well and truly into the top 2 this week.
Yeah, what a way to end the podcast, Nathan. Some of the sentences that you've just said, I honestly would have actually asked what you'd been taking if you'd have told me earlier in the season. The unthinkable, I guess. But yeah, we're in this situation now. We've got the 10-game run-in, 10 cup finals. And I guess everyone should strap themselves in because I'm sure there'll be plenty of twists and turns. But yes, from me, Nathan, thank you ever so much for watching and listening, as always. If you have watched on YouTube and you aren't yet subscribed, be sure to do that. You'll obviously be notified when we upload a podcast. And for audio listeners, of course, as well, do be kind and give us a nice rating. Because it's nice to be kind, and you've got every reason to be happy this week because we've won at Swansea for the first time in well over a decade. So yes, thank you once again, and that has been another episode of the Boropolis Podcast, and we will hopefully be coming to you next week with 2 Boro wins at the Riverside. Thanks again.